You're listening to the Gab Street Podcast, Columbus, Ohio's #1 podcast for underground talent. Every week we have new conversations with interesting individuals who contribute to the Columbus economy and its lively culture. You may find just what you're looking for right in your backyard. Let's get right into it. Welcome back to another week of the Gab Street Podcast. We are at episode 73. I wrote that number down the other day, and I kind of freaked out a little bit. That's a lot. So thank you for everyone that's been here since the beginning, my day ones. I appreciate y'all. We have a special episode today. We are joined by Walker and Ann Evans, who are the co-founders of Columbus Underground. You've probably heard of it. Say hello.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Of course. Got some cool questions for y'all today. We've had this booked for a really long time. I've been really looking forward to this. We actually connected over Discord, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Just by chance. So this is really cool.
Yeah.
First few questions here. Having been running Columbus Underground so long, since 2001, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are some trends that you have seen continue through today since the beginning or since near the beginning in Columbus?
I mean, I guess the through line maybe for Columbus Underground is that we started it wanting to really highlight what was going on in the city and the different changes and new things happening, and that's been a constant, I think, ever since the beginning. Yeah.
And bring kind of highlight voices that you don't always hear all the time.
Yeah. I mean, when you think back to 2001, just like exactly how long ago that was, almost 2 decades. This was before social media. This was before Yelp. A lot of people weren't really using the internet the way they do now. No one used the internet on their phones. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't a lot of local information. Even what you could get from like the Dispatch's website was pretty limited. So we saw a lot of things happening with like cool restaurants and music and entertainment, and none of it was really being shared online. So, now there's a million places you can find all that sort of stuff. So we've tried to, continue to evolve and increase the quality of what we do along the way.
Yeah, now it's a little bit more of curating the kinds of things your audience wants to hear so that when they come to you, they know what kind of to expect and what they want to know. They're going to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And how has that niche evolved over time? What have been the increasing demands from your readership?
Well, when we started it, being a lot younger, it was very entertainment focused. So music, movies, food, things to do on the weekends around the city. Over time, we saw more interest in like development trends and what's going on in neighborhoods and what's going on at City Hall with like civics and politics. But I think we've always just kind of taken the experimental approach. Like, you can always experiment with something, and if people respond to it, do more, and if people don't, do less. So always just kind of ebbed and flowed with what people are looking for.
Right. And we've lived in the city the whole time, pretty much around downtown in the inner city neighborhoods. So it's been a lot of kind of how our life has evolved and where we've been and things.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely pay a lot more attention to like Columbus City schools now that we have kids versus 20 years ago when we didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have there been any deep dives into the Columbus City school situation at the moment?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Plenty along the way, and our oldest is in middle school now, so we've been pretty involved. Okay. And Anne's done a lot with like at the PTO level, with individual schools and stuff, but also sitting on committees when they're reviewing like what to do with buildings that aren't being as frequently used as they used to. So she's also been pretty involved at like the board level, like going to meetings and stuff.
Cool.
I don't know how much we want to get into all
we
of
don't
that.
Have to.
Yeah, I think like most major cities, there are a lot of challenges with inner city schools. There's good and there's bad, and there's no easy way to fix it because a lot of them declined, over the span of 40 or 50 years. So there's no way to just like make them bounce back in, a really short amount of time. But
Yeah, so that's like we cover with writing and photography and video work a lot of these things on Columbus Underground, but then also in our personal lives we do a lot of community work with sitting on boards, coming up with ideas, fundraisers for groups, just getting people kind of connected in the community so that they can do the work that they want to do. So it's been good.
And when Columbus Underground began, did you already have these deep community roots, these connections, or was it more of, we're going to start this and create roots from this?
I'd say the latter because we were both not from here.
Okay.
So I came down here in 1998 to go to Ohio State. Okay. I'm from Northeast Ohio, and Ohio State was like the only school I kind of wanted to go to because it wasn't too far away from my home and stuff, and I just really liked it all growing up. And so originally I was going to study like environmental sciences and stuff, but then I just really liked English, so I just went that way, and I got my degree in English, and then I have a minor in business. And then my path is I did a lot of side jobs. My parents own a dairy farm, so it's always been a lot of kind of entrepreneur style growing up. You do a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work. It doesn't always pan out for you, but you're still doing all the hard work, and you're going and talking to people and stuff. And I really liked interviewing people and just getting their stories and things like that. But one of my jobs I had led to where I worked for a long time, which was at a law firm downtown. I was there for like 7.5 years, and that was, we met in college, and then it was a good background for the stuff that I was wanting to do with Columbus Underground. We kind of just both had both sides of it and brought it together, and it's worked out well.
Yeah. The name Columbus Underground, I think, really reflects what what we were doing at that point in time, because it was really like 10 people online talking to each other in those first early months, and kind of a self-defeating name because as it grew more popular, a lot of people know about it now, and I mean we see the stats and how many people read it. So
I almost asked about that.
Yeah, it's a lot more mainstream than the first year we did it, but I mean. We really started it almost like just kind of a fun side project. It wasn't really meant to be a business. And then as it kind of grew and evolved and we figured out ways that we could monetize what we're doing, we turned it into a full-time job and began to be able to hire people. It's just kind of grown organically, which has been really nice.
Will we change the name? I don't know. We'll wait and see.
Flavortown Underground is being suggested right now.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was literally about to ask, do you support the name change to Flavortown?
Not really.
No?
I don't. I think there's a lot more very good names that would draw a lot more from where the city is.
Yeah. And I've seen where someone pointed out that Guy Fieri lived here like as a baby and moved away like pretty quickly. Like he hasn't even lived here for a year as an infant. So it's funny for sure, but there are better names.
Have you heard any of the other suggestions? Because I personally have not. But
one of our writers, David Staley, he's a freelancer that does this great series called Next. He's a futurist. If you've heard of the Columbus Futurists group, he's also a professor at OSU. But they do like really deep dives on topics and think about where it could go, almost like the show Black Mirror, but not so negative.
Yeah,
not always as scary.
Yeah. So like if you think about like drone delivery, like what's that going to look like in 10 years? What's that going to look like in 20 years? And kind of thinking through those scenarios. So
that's cool.
He actually has a piece that's probably going up next week about 6 years from now, what would a name change actually look like? What sort of institutions would change their names? What sort of process that would look like? We've already taken down some of these statues of Columbus. Like, what's a logical scenario where we could be moving forward? And the name that he used in that
Well, you'll
piece,
have to come to the site next week.
Oh,
and read
it.
it.
Okay, well, there you go.
Or soon.
Yeah.
Off the record knowledge, not quite yet.
Sure.
Sure,
Yeah.
we'll go with that.
Yeah,
All right.
but it's a cool story.
Cool. Yeah, I would be very interested to look into that Futurist Society. It was
Yeah.
Society, right? Or what was it called?
I think
Columbus
it's just the
Futurists.
Futurists?
Yeah.
Yeah. They do regular meetings. I think it's all moved to Zoom for the moment, but they were doing regular meetings where they would get together, pick a topic, and just have these sort of like intellectual coffee discussions.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'll have to go check that out after this. Maybe get him on the show.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah.
like fun.
I'm sure he'd be down.
Very cool. This next question kind of goes in line with Columbus's future in a way. As a city, and especially this is topical now because of the political events we've had happening in the city lately, and the unique health situation we're in, and the way things are being handled. In both the dimensions of the people and the government, do you believe in Columbus's future? Do you believe in Columbus as a city? And what about it makes you believe in it, if so?
Yeah, I mean, I think that unlike a lot of other major cities in the Midwest that kind of saw a peak and a decline, Columbus's best days are still ahead of it. It's a city that's growing, it's evolving. There are certainly challenges that we need to overcome. But I think Columbus is still on an upward trajectory. I think a lot of cities and a lot of Americans are trying to come to terms with, what outcomes do we want out of police reform and the Black Lives Matter movement. And Columbus definitely has its own challenges that it needs to get through. But I think we can hopefully all come together and keep it moving forward.
Yeah, I think people have realized that the time of just meetings and studies is over, and it's time for actual meaningful change, and I think that's going to happen. I think there's enough really good, smart leaders here that are pushing for that to be the case this time. So it's good, and it's exciting, and it's going to be good for the city and the people that live here.
Yeah. I think our leaders, whether it's on the civic side or business side, are very in touch with being inclusive and having diverse voices at the table. I don't think that process is always perfect. Not everyone always gets to have a voice at the table, and there are certain blind spots that we've always had, but I think we have leadership willing to continue to push in the right direction versus being obstructionist. So I think that gives me hope.
That's good. Yeah. And that sounds like it's a unique quality to Columbus.
I think so, yeah. I mean, you look at the makeup of our city council, and it's super young. It's always been like fairly diverse in terms of men and women and black and white and different minorities, but a lot of times you don't see a lot of 30-year-olds serving on city council, and I mean, we have that. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't realize that that city council was that. What I had heard. Do you know who Matter News is? Have you heard of them? And we had them on quite a few weeks ago, and they were talking about how some people would be appointed to city council in ways that were not exactly appreciated by the people that live here and such. And I had heard a negative side of it, and I didn't realize it was so young and so diverse. So that's good to hear as well.
Yeah, there's some flaws with the appointment process, and it's been abused a bit in the past.
Yeah.
But I think generally speaking, broadly speaking, the people who do serve in those kind of roles generally are pushing for the city to be better and better.
Good. Cool. Going back to the beginning of Columbus Underground, because I'm interested in these roots. How did you two work with each other to create such a unique cultural space online?
I think we just complement each other really well.
Yeah.
We share the same sorts of ideas for kind of the future and where we see things. So it really hasn't been like a struggle or anything. I mean, sometimes people are always like, oh my God, how do you stay married and like work together and all this stuff? But I don't know. It's just weird. Like, I grew up with that. Like, my parents just worked together every single day. So it's nothing strange for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think we just work together really well, and we have pretty similar ideas about things. And then if we disagree, it's like, well, then what's gonna push us to the next level? And no hard feelings. Let's just do that because that's what makes sense.
Well, we've almost been doing it for 20 years at this point, so it's sort of like I don't know, what the difference would be. It'd be weird to not work together at this point. Yeah, when I think about friends who are like, oh, you go off to your job and I go off to my job, and we don't talk to each other for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that sounds strange to me. But I know that's the norm.
I guess. But I mean, our work, is kind of the city and stuff, so we're just always immersed in it. And
Yeah. Not that there's not stressful parts too,
Sure.
like any entrepreneurial endeavor, there are things that don't always go your way. So
yeah, and there's stuff that we've tried where we're always up for trying something and seeing if it works, and if it works, we continue to do it, and if it doesn't, then we'll either like, okay, let's just bring that back to the table and see if there's ways to improve it, or maybe we just don't do it anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I mean, sometimes people are afraid to fail, but it's not really failure. It's just trying it. If it doesn't work, move on. It's fine.
Yeah.
What have been some of those challenges that you've had to overcome in the process, or are still overcoming, especially now?
I mean, very early on, one of the biggest challenges was figuring out our personal health care situation. This was back in 2010, where we were going to both be doing it full time, but at the time I was pregnant, so we weren't able to really get any. This was before the Affordable Care Act and all of that, so it was
being pregnant was a pre-existing condition.
I remember.
Yeah, it was really not a good spot, but we really believed in what we were doing and we wanted to like make a go of it, so we worked to figure it out. But it was like a scary challenge because I was being told, like, well, if you have this baby and something's wrong with it or something happens to you, like, you're not going to be covered at all. And we were just kind of like, we can't really afford that. Like, I don't know what to do. So that's also just still a major flaw with our country in general.
Yeah.
But it did work out, and then we got our own plan. And then when we started bringing on employees, it was like figuring out what kind of benefits we would be able to offer as a very tiny company. And that's also one of the challenges now in Columbus. There are a lot of like startups and companies here that are really cool, but they also get this huge influx of funding and dollars, and we've never had that. We've always funded the company ourselves.
Was that due to not being able to receive it, or was that more of a
we never
choice?
really went out and asked for investors. I mean, it's not really something we were interested in. What we did was we got our expenses as low as we could, and then made things that were not crazy decisions. Like we worked at like a kind of a co-working space a long time before that was kind of cool. Yeah, we had a space above Duamici with Jeff Mathis, and it was really nice because Walker had a connection to him, I think, through your Dine Originals board service. So, I mean, I think they probably just talked, and he's like, well, I have an office and you just need a desk and kind of like an address. It's not your home. So I don't remember when that started, 2005.
I have to go back and look.
That was kind of our first. We've been on Gay Street that whole time. So once we had that, he would let us expand to have a couple employees, but then it got kind of packed in there. So then we were like, well, we've grown enough. We could probably look for a space on our own. So we talked to the day companies, and they had a spot that was not the best looking, but it was inexpensive. So we moved down the street, and we had that office for quite a while. And then we were wanting to make it a better space for what we were doing. We had enough employees where we like to have, group meetings and things, and it wasn't laid out the best. So then we were looking around, and then the day companies bought the space across the street, and they were like, well, we bought this, and why don't you just look at this and see if you like this? And so that's where we are now. We built that space out to how we wanted it, and it works really well for us. It's not huge, but it's a good spot for the amount of people we have and who comes in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the original question about challenges and stuff along the way, I think if you read anything about the state of journalism and how things have evolved over the past 10, 15 years, there's a lot of challenges from industry consolidation. A lot of the major newspapers, TV stations, radio stations, they're all kind of being swallowed up. Yeah. And so you see a lot of people being laid off and jobs being consolidated. A lot of towns have lost newspapers and things like that as they're unable to compete with Google and Facebook. They kind of have the duopoly on advertising, digital advertising. And so thankfully, we don't have the legacy costs that a newspaper does. So we've been able to be pretty nimble and change along the way, but we're definitely impacted by, if Facebook changes an algorithm, we built an audience on there, and all of a sudden you can't reach that audience anymore unless you're paying for it because Facebook wants more money. And so
it's very frustrating now to see the path of the internet. The internet used to be a very fun, exciting, cool place where you could just happen across all these quirky, little weird, original things. Mm-hmm. And now it's just, if Google doesn't like it, you don't see it. And if Facebook doesn't want to show it to you, you don't see it. And it's really frustrating because it shouldn't be like that. Yeah. It shouldn't be basically a couple of private companies that control how you can view the internet.
Yeah.
I have a real problem with that. And it's really hard because, we are strictly online. We do have an audience. We have a lot of people who just come directly to Columbus Underground because they've grown with it over the years, or they find it and they like it and they know to seek it out. But then we do have other people who, back in whenever Facebook was kind of getting popular to people, and it was telling everyone just like all your favorite brands and your favorite companies, and you can just come here and see all this stuff. And so every general person kind of got that message in their head, well, if I like it on there and then I just jump on Facebook, I'll just see all their updates. And now you don't see any of that. Yeah. And we've talked to some friends about this, and they're like, oh, I just thought maybe you weren't putting anything out there. And it's no, we still do a lot of stuff. You just don't see any of it.
This gatekeeper is in the way.
So that's a challenge, and I don't know how. I don't know when that's going to get any different, considering what our current political climate is. I think it's going to take some real innovative thinking about and some intervention to break this sort of stuff up and make the internet back to a fun, cool place. There's been lots of little comedy shows that people have had. I think, what was it, Funny or Die? Maybe not them, but there was another one similar to that. And they were doing a great thing online, and then they've just been shut out and they can't operate anymore. And you see this a lot with all the media companies that aren't necessarily really media, but BuzzFeed and stuff, where they built all these specific departments of their company, and then Facebook decided video is not really that important, so their whole video department couldn't really make it anymore. So it's like, should Facebook really be able to decide that on behalf of a lot of people?
Right.
Yeah, I've fortunately been able to avoid Facebook quite a bit here.
Yeah.
My parents are active on it and such, but I'm 19 years old. I've been able to. It's not really a facet of people my age.
Yeah. But for those kind of gatekeepers to have so much influence over specific industries,
oh, for sure,
it's a detriment to people trying to be entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And especially even to this show.
Yeah.
Because even though we're not really on there, we're mainly on Instagram. That's a big way we reach out to people and get the word out. And they're owned by Facebook as well. And I have had to pay for, ads on there, sponsored ads on there as well. So
I mean, even things like Spotify and Apple Music and places where you would go to discover podcasts, you're one of a million in that list. And if Apple has you at the top of the list, you'll get discovered. And if not, you're kind of buried.
Yep.
And it has nothing to do with you or the quality of what you're doing. You're working through this gatekeeper system, and and
Yeah.
it'd be nice to see it more equalized.
And you even see this in news. I mean, you always have to I think with news, there's always been a way to write a story that's a good way for a human to read it. And then you want to write a story like that because you want high quality stuff on your site and for what you are wanting to put out there. But then you have Google that's like, well, you need to write it for robots so that it can be scanned properly and searched. Do you want to write for robots or do you want to write for the people who are reading it?
Yeah.
It's
print newspapers did not need SEO. I don't think.
Right.
No, they didn't. But then also they didn't really have a good way to tell if all of their news was getting read.
Yeah.
And so that's also kind of a challenge too, because we can clearly see here's how many people read these topics and these topics, maybe not so much. Should we even keep doing them? Like as a business decision, should we even keep doing some of this stuff that we do? But we do have that conversation internally with our team and stuff, but a lot of the time we feel like, well, those topics, even if they're not read, they are read by a core group of people who are really either interested in that topic or they want to find out more about it or become interested. And we would also look, does it contribute to the greater conversation for the city? And most of the time, yeah, it does. So we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And what are some examples of topics like that have almost been axed?
Oh, you can really nail down, maybe this theater review from a really tiny theater company here isn't really well read. But if we want to be a world-class city, world-class cities have those things. And everyone thinks, what kind of amenities does a cool place have? They have cool arts and they have all these little cool groups doing things. And those sorts of groups need to have an independent party reviewing their work.
Yeah.
And that's how maybe they get funded, because they can say, well, Columbus Underground did this review of it and here it is. And it's, it helps them look legit.
Yeah. It's all about maintaining a balance, because what's the most well read is not always the most important topic. So you have to maintain that balance between popularity and seriousness and importance and all that sort of stuff. Because if you only chase eyeballs, then you're turned into BuzzFeed. It's just lists.
Exactly. Yep.
Here's a list of patios. Here's a list of bars. Here's a list of this.
Yeah.
And it's do you want to only be a listicle site and have nothing of real substance? Or do you want to write about oh, here's what they were talking about at City Hall last night and this important discussion. Not everyone's going to read it, but the people who are reading it are getting that valuable information that they need. So we try to keep it balanced across the spectrum. Not that we're not opposed to doing a list of patios, because some people want that,
And it's fun.
Yeah.
Currently a lot of the news is not great.
Yeah.
So it's fun to put out some
a silver lining,
lighthearted, fun types of stories.
Yeah.
To kind of help with the doom gloom situation.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is Columbus Underground is not going to have a quiz where it decides which Friends character you are.
No.
Only if we can figure out a really fun way to make it local.
Yeah.
Because we do like to have a really, I don't love this term, but hyper-local feel.
Yeah.
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 Which Columbus neighborhood are you? Are you more of a Bexley? Are you more of a Clintonville? Yeah.
I would love to see that, actually.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun.
Think about that one.
Hey, Gab Street listeners. Today's episode is sponsored by the three-piece indie pop band, The Manatee Room. Their debut single, Pastel, released on all major streaming platforms on July 17th. Here's a little sample of their track, and if you want more, head to the description of this episode where you'll find a link to find the full song. The funds from this sponsorship went straight to the Columbus Creatives COVID grant, which you will hear more about momentarily. If you've listened to Gab Street in the past, you know that the show is dedicated to showing off awesome Columbus culture. Now we're putting not only our voices forward, but a helping hand. Through the summer of 2020, Gab Street will be collaborating with Ravenshood Music Group to create the Columbus Creatives COVID Grant. This grant is a fundraising initiative aimed toward helping creatives in Columbus who have been impacted financially by the COVID crisis. We will be accepting applications through Saturday, August 15th, and we will be accepting funds through August 31st. Voting will take place during those 16 days. You can find links to the donation pages and how you can apply in the description of this episode. Now back to the show. And when yesterday, full disclosure, I do all of my show notes the day before because it's fresh. But when I was looking at the front page of Columbus Underground yesterday, I noticed that there was not very much doom and gloom, and it was actually a very hopeful page to look at, and actually the way the front page is curated is very effective, and I really like the way that it's put together.
Oh, well, thanks.
So
yeah, I would say generally speaking, because yesterday in terms of today would have been Friday, usually there's a little more seriousness toward the start of the week and a little more like weekend, food, movie reviews type of stuff toward the end of the week, and so maybe that's why it was a little more skewed in that direction. But yeah, I mean, we don't really write about like crime, car crashes, you know.
You can get that elsewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you turn on any of the TV stations, you know, at 10 p.m. at night, that's all that stuff is highway car crashes.
It's just not anything
weather.
We really wanted to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we are focusing on the protests that are happening because that's a large cultural change that needs to happen here. But we've always kind of wanted to focus more on the things that would help you build a life in the city and put down roots or make connections and do things like that. And we've had a lot of people who have been featured on Columbus Underground and then either got funding for their business or they grew their business, or it was like something that made them feel really what I'm doing matters and is legitimate and real in a way that if they just kept doing it on their own, like maybe they wouldn't feel that way. So it's been pretty cool. It's also helped a couple people launch some book deals, so they've become authors from the work that they've done on Columbus Underground. So
Nice.
Yeah, it's all pretty neat.
Very cool. So let's see here. Is there a good question to base that conversation off of? So what is the biggest thing that you want people to get out of reading Columbus Underground, then?
Well, I think because we cover a really broad range of topics, we hear from people that they get different things out of it. So, Some people really just use it as, Anne puts together the mega weekend list every Thursday at 2 p.m. and it's, here's what's going on this weekend. And we have some people who are just like, this is how I plan my life, my weekend. I look for things to do, and I live and die. I import this stuff into my calendar.
Nice.
And so maybe they're not as interested in something else, but that's the thing that they know it for. We do a lot of event production. We've really grown into doing events over the past couple of years, partly because it was a different way to kind of monetize our audience, because we've never wanted to have a paywall. We want everybody to be able to read the news and have it be equitable. You don't have to pay for a subscription. So we launched the events as a way to kind of showcase some of the things that we write about in a way that if you want to support us and you want to support the things that we're showcasing, you can buy a ticket to an event and come. So the biggest one that we do is the coffee festival every fall, Columbus Coffee Festival. Yeah. We had just over 5,000 people at it last year. It was our first 2-day event for that, featuring coffee roasters from all over the state and even a few beyond.
Dueling Axes had their lands there, did they not?
Yeah.
I actually work there. So,
oh, really? Nice.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that was crazy popular. I think because a lot of people had not tried it yet at that point in time, axe throwing at all. So the fact that it was free and included in the event, there was a line.
And it was outdoors.
Yeah, the
cool
weather was nice.
Area.
Yeah, we really grew the event, that event to include, we didn't want it to be you just show up and drink some coffee and leave. Like, oh, I'm going to try this one, and then I'm going to go home. So we're like, let's throw some axes. We had the Humane Society there that run the cat cafe. So you could pet cats. We had one cat that got adopted that weekend.
Yeah, it was cool for them too, because they had like a record-setting donation. That they got.
Yeah, they call it donations. Yeah.
Cool.
We had poets there doing live poetry readings. We had musicians there, like in different stations all around.
Yeah,
art projects
and they were all paid.
Yeah.
We invested in all of that because it's important for them to be paid for their work, and that's another instance where those people doing like poetry like that, maybe they've just always just done it as a free exchange or something, but now they are able to say, well, I did this performance at the Columbus Coffee Festival and I got paid this amount, so this is kind of putting value to my work, and I can prove that that's a thing, and if I get booked again, then I should be paid because it's work and creativity that they're doing, and it's good that we're able to do that kind of thing for artists and people.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just to go back to your question, some people just know us for events and that's what they want to get out of it. So I guess overall, if people come to the site, click around, check out the different sections, maybe explore a topic that you might not normally, and you might find something that you weren't expecting to be interested in.
Yeah, I'd hope that if it's something that maybe they saw on Facebook, they always actually click through and read the article and then look around a little bit more and find out more about what this is as a whole.
Yeah. Cool. And some of the events included in those were the Sunlight and Moonlight markets as well, right?
Well,
to a certain extent.
So one of the organizations that we help out with is called the Gay Street Collaborative, which is a nonprofit business association that was started for the businesses along Gay Street right downtown, maybe like 2013, about 7 years ago. So that organization that we just help with as volunteers, we launched a series of events to kind of bring people downtown, help the existing retail businesses there, and kind of make it a little bit more of a draw. So those events were started as a way to kind of fulfill that need. So they're not Columbus Underground events, although we've been tied to them as volunteers a lot.
And we promote it because we can. So.
Yeah.
We do.
but those don't fund Columbus Underground at all. It's a separate nonprofit that we help out with. But
sometimes I might set a booth up there, but not too often.
Yeah, and did some stuff with like the PTO as a fundraiser there a couple years ago.
I sold like Urban Living Tour tickets.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. But those are fun. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we like to do just because we want to see the city keep growing. And I mean, we've seen, at this point, after 7 years of the Moonlight Market, just hundreds of like micro business, like someone who they have a job, they work at Nationwide or something, but they love making salsa on the weekend, and they started to jar their salsa, and like it's an opportunity for them to take their hobby and actually make some money and start legitimizing and grow their customer base. And so being able to help facilitate that and just be a connector in that process is really rewarding to us.
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite things. Is just being able to, we have this platform and we're able to create opportunities for others, and we do that a lot, and it's just really rewarding.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh man, I had a question. It was right there. It has now left me. Oh, yes. So, on the topic of events still, what are some of the, if there are any, plans to move these over to digital formats potentially, or more adaptive
Well,
ways
what
of doing
we've
them?
been talking about, and we have to be conscious about what the governor is saying you're allowed to do, but we are hopeful that we can still do a version of the Urban Living Tour in the late summer, just having more precautions in place. And
We normally do that event in May, like at the beginning of May, so it's
Okay.
been delayed.
Yeah. And we are also hopeful that we will be able to do the coffee festival still on the September 28th and 29th, I believe, at the Ohio Village.
Say those dates one more time
Is
for
that
the listeners.
I think they're September 28th and 29th. It's the
Okay.
last weekend.
Write that down, listeners.
ColumbusCoffeeFestival.com has all the
Okay.
details.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
So we are hopeful that it's a really huge outdoor space, and we have plans to put in a lot of precautions and safety, and probably even reduce the amount of tickets sold so that just people can be sure to be spread out. So yeah, we should have tickets for that next month.
Yeah, but some of the events, like we had a healthy living festival that we've done for a couple of years, and that was going to be in March, and this was right as it was at the end of March, so it was right when things were starting to get shut down, so we canceled that event for the year because it was indoor, and you'd have like 500 people in a big, like ballroom type
And
facility
that was
at
back
once.
when no one really knew what was going on.
Yeah. That's right
Like,
when the Arnold was being canceled.
I had
and,
literally
very
just
early.
gone to a conference, and it really wasn't anything anyone was talking about. And then I was reading, or talking to Walker, and he's like, the Arnold just got shut down. And I'm like, well, I'm out at this conference, and they're not even talking about this stuff. This is, I don't know. It's weird times.
Yeah.
But since we had launched the events to bring in another arm or another revenue stream for our company, and we had to cancel a lot of that stuff, we did launch a donor campaign. We're not a nonprofit, but there are people who really like what Columbus Underground does culturally for the city. So we did launch a donor campaign just to give people a way to support it.
Yeah.
And that's been, we thank everyone who's done that. It's been really nice.
Yeah, because even though, advertising has, kind of ground to a halt for a lot of businesses, because if all restaurants are closing, then the restaurants don't need advertising. And so that impacts us. But at the same time, we still have just as much news to write about, if not more so. So we need to be able to continue to have professional journalists working and producing the stuff that people want to read. So having those alternates has been really good. We also launched an online store because we had some merch.
And it's something that we've been talking about for a long time. We
Yeah.
should do this. We should do this. And sometimes it's like it just gets bumped out.
Yeah.
I'm like, now's the time. Let's just get it done. Get the licensing you need. Just do it.
Yeah.
What
So-
kind of merch you got on there?
Well, like events like the coffee festival, when you buy a ticket for that, you get a coffee mug as you
Nice.
enter, and it's yours to keep and all that sort of stuff. So we've always had some left over from years past because we always order more than we need. So we've had stuff like that and T-shirts. We did a taco event like 2 years ago, and we had hot sauce left over from that.
Nice.
Which has like a 6-year expiration date.
Yeah.
Hot sauce, it never goes bad. So we started selling some of that.
Some pins.
Yeah, little things of those.
Yeah.
Of that nature. But it was something we never really wanted to do just because we didn't have like the staff and the capacity to manage an online store and deal with orders and delivery and all that sort of stuff. And COVID changed all that. Now we have a need to get rid of some of this merchandise, and
Yeah, and we're thankful. Our team has just been really open to changes, and I feel like you need to have that kind of an attitude if you want to work at an environment like this. That's kind of just, there's not really a solid playbook for anything. Like when we started, there wasn't too many people in this space, so we would just be like, how do we do this? I don't know, let's just figure it out. And I mean, that was kind of, I at least had a good awareness of a lot of like, what should a contract look like and that kind of thing from working at a law firm. I had a pretty good firsthand look at all the stuff that goes wrong with companies and what kind of like safety measures you put in place as a business owner. So that was a really good learning experience to bring to running your own business. And I don't think a lot of people do enough in the beginning to make issues not as detrimental. And that's important.
It's easy to be optimistic, but
there's something that's gonna go wrong,
Yeah.
and it's best if you're really prepared as possible for it.
Yeah. Especially when you're talking about an event with 5,000 people over 2 days, like someone is going to have an issue.
Yeah.
Like how can you get ahead of that in the beginning and mitigate it as best as you can? And knock on wood, we've never had too many, like, maybe, you know, no one's gotten really hurt or anything like that. But, you know, someone
We
might.
had EMTs and people
Oh, yeah.
at the.
They were right next to
festival,
dueling axes.
so-
Nice.
And they're
Very good.
If you can have axe throwing with people highly caffeinated, no one got hurt. That's a win, right?
It's a safe sport, what are you going to say?
Yeah. Very professional.
Cool. This is a topic that I did not have written down, but I've been interested in for a little bit. And it seems like Gab Street and Columbus Underground kind of have the same goals in mind. I'm a little smaller scale, but I'm going for the same thing, essentially.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you two were in a different city at the same stage when you started this, if you would have started a Lexington Underground or I'm not going to say New York Underground because that's kind of, they have that kind of stuff.
Sure,
but
yeah.
just another city that's kind of like this, do you think you would have started that for another place if you were there instead?
At that same point in time, in like 2001. I think some cities are on the same kind of trajectory as Columbus when you look at like Denver or Nashville or Austin. So I think one of those like rapidly growing cities, you know, maybe would have had the same sort of trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we would have probably had all the same interests. I mean, I was really interested in being creative, talking to people, getting stories out there. Walker's always really liked web design and Photoshop and things like that. So, maybe.
I only ask because I did an interview with another podcast a little bit ago where we talked about, if you had, because I was born and raised in Columbus, I've always been here. If I had been born and raised somewhere else, would I have started a Gab Street for that city? And I feel like I would have. Like every city can have a Gab Street in it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
just wondering what your take on that would have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's room for this sort of thing in a lot of, you know, mid-sized to larger cities for sure. I think it'd be a lot tougher if we were in a smaller community. But I do think that there's something uniquely open about Columbus, and maybe it's because so many people gravitate here from other places. We have so many, you know, like in migration, you know, someone who grew up, you know, in a different part of Ohio or even moved from somewhere else. that there's not a lot of barriers and doors and gatekeepers to knock down, like social wise. I've always heard, and I'm not saying this to be detrimental, but I've heard that if you're an adult in Cincinnati and someone says, "What school did you go to?" they're talking about high school. Where here, if someone says, "What school did you go to?" they're talking about college, because they're assuming you probably went to college somewhere else and moved here for a job. So there's less of that wariness of outsiders sort of thing. I think people in Columbus are like, "Oh, that person's doing a cool thing. I want to check it out." There's not a who is that and who do they think they are and why didn't they get permission from all these other people before they started their thing.
People are really open to sharing their experience here. I mean, a lot of people, it might take a few asks because people are busy, but a lot of people will talk to you.
Yeah, I joke that we're at just 1 degree of separation. There's no 6 degrees of separation. It's like everyone is just one person removed from someone else in Columbus.
That's true. Yeah. You can see that. There is not a lot of tribalism here, I would say.
I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, maybe in some subsets of neighborhoods or groups or something. I'm sure there's always a little bit of the club, cool kids club status.
Yeah.
But overall, I think people are pretty friendly.
Cool. Well, I am of the same opinion. I do believe in Columbus in that way. I think we're all very connected, kind people here. So. What are your goals for 2020 and beyond? Situation allowing.
I think every small business is just like, let's just survive 2020 intact and not shut down.
That's a goal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, we always have projects that we're working on and ideas we're trying to develop. We're overdue to do kind of a major redesign of the website. It's been a couple of years since we did a major overhaul, so that's kind of a goal. We have an app we've been trying to launch for a while that's been kind of put on the back burner a little bit. So some smaller things like that, but everything kind of changed in like March when it was upheaval.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what is the best way for people to find you in Columbus Underground and support you?
Launching their web browser of choice and going to www.columbusunderground.com. As Ann said earlier, don't follow us on Facebook because Facebook will not show you all the updates.
We have a variety of newsletters you can sign up for.
Yes.
So that's always an easy reminder. If you're not a person who daily goes to a certain website, you can sign up for those.
And they're based on category too. So if you just want the weekend update, you can get that via email. If you just want like the politics update, you can get that via email. So I think there's 7 different newsletters.
Nice.
Yeah. We're on all the social channels.
Yep. Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, although we don't use that very much. YouTube. We've been doing a lot of video production over the past couple of months, and so we have a YouTube channel that's growing pretty rapidly. The videos go on Facebook as well.
Nice.
Everywhere. Just Google it, I guess.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any last minute shout outs to make before we wrap up? People who helped along the way.
Yeah. I mean, everyone really. We've talked to so many people in so many different realms, from the smallest of, businesses and volunteers. We have a lot of people who help out with some of our events and stuff.
Yeah, we started a CU ambassador team, so we have volunteers who are just really up with what Columbus Underground is, so they are great kind of like first faces at our events.
Our staff.
But really, we're just grateful the city chooses to continue to support it, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Appreciate you coming on this week. Looking forward to everything that is to come. And thank you for listening this week. My listeners, we call them pedestrians on here, Gab Street. But we'll be coming at you next Wednesday morning at 6 a.m., just like every week. We'll see you then.